How does it feel to be alone? How does it feel to be abandoned? So, one of the hardest moments in life and in faith is not when life is painful in of itself, but rather it's when God feels distant from you. So ask yourself, have you ever prayed and then God felt like and you felt like God was silent? Because moments like these, like, you would feel that God was distant and prayers are not answered and you just feel alone spiritually. And that is one of the and that is just a real human experience, feeling distant from God. And this is what Jesus Christ experienced, just that on the cross. So Matthew 27 and Mark 15 as well. So he was crucified on the cross earlier that day, and everyone was just mocking him, even the crucified soldiers, as far as I remember. And yeah, it was bad. And then in the 9th hour, which is approximately 3 p.m. So at 3 p.m., this is what Jesus Christ said: "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" So this is on 2 verses, Matthew 27:46 and Mark 15:34. As you would know, this is one of the most emotionally intense last words that Jesus ever said, because and it was the only one experiencing forsakenness. And remember that it's not just physical pain, but it's also like spiritual and relational anguish. Because as you would know that he said it with a loud voice, hence why I said it out loud. And that just shows how intense this word was. Now, let's make it clear what forsaken means, because it does not mean that Jesus was totally separate from the Father, or the Father hating his Son now, or the Trinity's broken. No. What instead happens when he said that word was that Jesus experienced the depth of what it feels like to be forsaken, and a sense of distance, silence, and abandonment. But pay attention to this, because this is a key observation. Because Jesus still says, "My God," which means that the relationship is still there and the faith is still present. So remember this, because the relationship between the Son and the Father, at the moment, the relationship was anguish, but it was not broken. So let's see how this bears sin in Corinthians 5:21, which basically states, "For our sake he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God." So take away from this. So Jesus, on that moment, he takes on the sin of humanity, because sin itself, as you would know, it separates humanity and God. And in that moment, Jesus stands in our place, because he experiences exactly what sin does: alienation and separation. So what he's doing there is substitution. He takes what we deserve. And then another verse to connect to is Psalms 22, because the very first verse, it says exactly that: my God, why have you forsaken me? And why are you so far from saving me from the words of my groaning? But keep this in mind. At first, it sounds like suffering, but in the end, it results in triumph, victory, and trust and deliverance. I forgot to tell you that before that it's about like also mocking and physical pain. You see that with everyone mocking him, and Jesus excruciating pain on the cross, you also see that as well. But even in suffering, Jesus points to the scripture and holding on to God, because the cross is not the end of the story, because Jesus knows the ending even when he's suffering. Because at that moment, like, Jesus feels abandoned, like many of us at some point, but yet he still trusted God. So take away from this, like, feeling distant from God does not mean that God is gone. No, no, no. But what does it mean is that, and to make it clear, faith is not the absence of struggle, but faith can exist in pain and confusion. So take away from this, Jesus may feel forsaken, and he feels forsaken, but he does not let go of God. So to make it clear from the resurrection perspective, so yes, Jesus truly died, and he was in the tomb for 3 days. But then he rose again in victory. He literally responded as if like in the game. Took 3 days to respond, and he did it. That is the greatest thing ever in gaming history. But I'm not done yet, because I'm not done yet. But let's make this clear, that the moment of forsakenness was real, but it was not the final. Because what looked like abandonment, God was still at work. And that cross leads to victory and not defeat. But let's make this clear for all of us, because Jesus Christ experienced this, that he understands our moment of silence, our pain at distance, and we are not alone. Feelings are real, but they're not always truthful. Because when God feels distant, like, remember, for all of us, just continue to pray, trust God, and hold on to the whole my God like Jesus did. Because we may feel far from God, but we are not truly forsaken. Because, remember this, so Jesus experienced the feeling of forsakenness so that we would not face the same. Because the cross shows both the depth of suffering and the depth of God's love. I actually found this impromptu statement because I think it was Hebrews 13:5, because God said this, I will never leave you, nor forsake you. And keep that in mind, that whenever we feel alone in, like, we may be separate from God, we may feel like that, but God says, no, I'm always with you. Because Jesus was willing to enter that mode of darkness, so we never have to face us alone. And that cross, like, God may feel distant, but he's actually closer than what we think. Because he experienced the silence of God so that our silence would never mean that God is gone. And so we may feel forsaken, but because of Christ, we never truly are. So that's just, so this is just one of the most, like, this is one of the most intense words that so far, and I think to be like the most intense of all. So it's just rough, like, and I always feel like I to be honest, like, I felt that I was convinced to just, I feel like I had a conviction to pick this one because it's just emotional and quite intense that I want to take this one because it's just, the hype that says that Eli let myself with Connie is just, it was a lot, yeah. Even though I didn't have much time to prepare because I was so busy with, like, academic stuff, and I won't say much here, but you know. But anyways, well, but one thing to take away from this, one thing to take away is we will never be forsaken. Well, anyways, well, that's about it. Thank you, everyone. Bye.